Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about something that sounds pretty simple on the surface, but is actually, well, it's one of the biggest puzzles in AI right now. It's this. When you ask an AI, hey, why'd you do that? What are you actually asking for? It turns out the answer has less to do with code and a whole lot more to do with some really old philosophical debates. So picture this, and you've probably run into it. You take one AI model, you run two different explanation tools on it, and you get two totally different answers, maybe even answers that completely contradict each other. Now, that's not just some weird little bug. No, it points to a much, much bigger problem. It makes you question whether you can really trust these systems at all. And the solution we're always told about is explainable AI, or XAI, right? These are the tools that are supposed to crack open that infamous black box of things like neural networks. The whole promise is to make AI transparent, make it fair, make it trustworthy, so we can actually feel good about using it for important stuff. But, as we're about to see, it's just not that simple. And this is where we get to the absolute heart of the matter. See, the problem isn't just a technical one, it's a philosophical one. Every single XAI tool out there, whether the people who built it know it or not, is based on a hidden set of beliefs about what an explanation even is. And to unpack that, we need to bring in two big ideas from philosophy, ontology and epistemology. First up, you've got ontology. It's basically the study of what's real, what actually exists. So for us, the big ontological question is this. Is there a single objective, capital T truth for why a model made a decision? Does that one true reason exist somewhere in the math, totally separate from us? Or is the whole idea of an explanation something that we humans just kind of make up? And then you've got epistemology, which is all about knowledge. So even if we decide that a true explanation exists, how much of it can we actually know? Can we see it perfectly, with total objectivity, just by using logic? Or are we always looking at it through our own biased, limited, human eyeballs? Now, here's where it gets really cool. You can put these two ideas together on a grid. And this grid, this is basically our decoder ring for understanding any XAI method. On one axis, we've got ontology. Does a single truth exist? And on the other axis, epistemology. How much of it can we actually know? Every single XAI tool fits somewhere in this map, based on its hidden assumptions. And when we start plotting these assumptions, what they find are four totally distinct philosophical paradigms. You can think of them as the four fundamental DNAs of AI explanations. So let's walk through them one by one and fill out our grid. All right, first up, we have the most straightforward approach. Let's call this one the truth seeker, or what's more formally called the logical positivist paradigm. This view is super clear. Yes, an absolute one and only true explanation exists for every decision. And yes, we can know it completely just by digging into the model's math. A perfect example is a basic gradient analysis. It just shows you exactly how the output changes with the input. Pure, simple math. Okay, next up, we've got a much more practical take on things, the pragmatist, which you'd call the contemporary realist paradigm. Now, these folks still believe there's a real objective truth out there, but, and this is a big but, they admit we can only ever see it from a certain point of view. So an explanation isn't good because it's true, it's good because it's useful for a specific task. And guess what? A ton of the tools you use every day, Lime, SHAP, GradChem, they all live right here in this camp. Now we take a really interesting turn. Let's meet the human-centered paradigm, or the interpretive paradigm. And this one just throws the whole idea of an external truth right out the window. It says explanations aren't out there in the math at all. They're purely mental things that only exist inside a human brain. So a good explanation isn't the most mathematically pure one. It's the one that just looks right or feels intuitive to a person. A method like LRP, which is all about producing clean heat maps, is a classic example. And that brings us to our final quadrant, which is probably the most mind-bending of all, the relativist, which falls under the postmodern paradigm. This view argues that there is no such thing as an explanation for a single thing in isolation. You can't just ask, why A? That's a meaningless question. The only question that makes sense is, why A instead of B? Everything is relative. All explanations are just comparisons to some kind of baseline. And tools like integrated gradients or deep lift are built from the ground up on this very idea. Okay, so I know that was a super quick tour through some heavy philosophy. You're probably sitting there thinking, that's cool and all, but what does this have to do with the actual Python code I'm writing? Well, get ready for the aha moment, because these massive philosophical jumps, they're hidden inside what look like tiny little tweaks in the algorithms. Just look at this. All four of these methods are basically just variations of backpropagation. But watch what happens. GradCam just weights the gradients by how active the neurons are, and bam, we've jumped from a search for absolute truth to a search for a useful truth. That's a huge leap. Then LRP normalizes the gradients to make the output look cleaner to us, and suddenly we're in a human-centered world. And then integrated gradients sums everything up against a baseline, which catapults us straight into a relative, postmodern view. It's wild. Tiny changes in math that represent giant leaps in philosophy. So, why on earth does any of this matter? It matters, and it matters a lot, because choosing an XAI tool isn't just a technical choice anymore. It's a philosophical one. And if you make the wrong choice, if you have a mismatch, the consequences can be really, really serious. I mean, this quote from the source paper just says it all. Think about a field like medicine. The entire field is built on the belief that there's an objective biological reality we can study, a contemporary realist view. So if you're going to use an explanation tool in that context, it had better share those same assumptions. You can't use a tool from one of those mind-dependent paradigms, like our human-centered one, because the fundamental beliefs just don't line up. And that's the bottom line, right? The philosophy baked into your tool has to match the philosophy of your problem. You can't use an explanation that's just visually pleasing to try and justify a scientific discovery. The assumptions are incompatible, and that can lead you to conclusions that are not just wrong, but potentially even dangerous. So let's just boil this all down. What are the big takeaways here? First, it's crystal clear that not all AI explanations are the same. Second, when you pick an XAI tool, you're also picking a philosophy, whether you know it or not. And third, and this is the most critical part, you absolutely have to make sure that philosophy lines up with what your problem actually needs, because a mismatch isn't just a small error, it's a fundamental flaw. And that really brings us to the final thought. Now that you have this framework, the next time you're about to ask an AI to explain itself, just pause for a second. Because the most important question you can ask isn't the one you're about to type to the machine, it's the one you need to ask yourself first. What kind of answer am I really looking for? Am I after an objective truth, a useful hint, something that just feels right, or a comparison between two things? Because the quality of the AI's answer will depend entirely on the quality of your own question, and that is the real key to explaining the explanation.